So I am ready to turn the meeting over to our Toastmaster of the day, which is Jeff Vaught. So Jeff, would you take it away? Thank you, Jeff Vaught.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. There's a Oscar Wilde quote. It's really a requote of a Greek philosopher, but I'll give you the Oscar Wilde quote, and it's, "To expect the unexpected shows a thoroughly modern intellect." Said another way, don't be surprised, be prepared.
Right, good. All right. Well, just a quick reminder that our word of the day is expectation. The theme of the day is expecting the unexpected. And for Debbie, the question is there anything unexpected that has been fun for you in the past 12 months? And if you don't like that question, be like a politician and just make up one of your own and answer what you want to.
If I answer this honestly, there have been very few expectations in my life in the past few months that have been fun. We have experienced several traumatic events. The anniversary of the first was at 3:23 a.m. today. That said, last year at Thanksgiving, our entire family was together and we celebrated my 70th birthday. I was not expecting a big celebration, but my daughter baked a s'mores cake that was absolutely delicious. We took the leftovers to the hospital and shared them with the cardiac ICU staff. They loved it. My daughter and granddaughter set up this fantastic cake topper, which I have no idea where it is. I would show it to you. I believe it's packed. I have been planning to move, and a lot of things are now packed. But if I had one event that was both unexpected and went beyond my wildest expectations in the past 12 months, it would be my 70th birthday anniversary surrounded by most of my family at a tabletop Toastmaster.
Yay! Thank you. Yay! Thank you. Yeah, it's been a difficult year for many people. Right. And now, Rick, for you, you could take that question. You could be like a politician and make up your own, or you can make up something with regard to expecting the unexpected or expectation and say, what would you like to happen that is not yet expected?
I am going to go back exactly 31 years. And it is a form of expectation, expecting. 31 years ago, my wife and I were expecting a third child. We ended up getting a third child, and a fourth, and a fifth. So, and that's been the highlight of my life. Changed my life completely. That the very first year was a complete blur. I don't remember it. There was so much going on. They say that there's not enough hours in the day to take care of that many big babies. But my wife is tremendous. She found ways. And I found some of my own ways. I found a way to feed 3 babies at once. had one in each arm, and you can't see my feet, but I had a foot that was holding up a bottle of a baby in a soccer chair. And also, when I came home from work, immediately my wife handed me 3 babies, and I immediately put them into a triplet stroller. And I immediately walked around the area where I live, Pleasant Ridge, for about until the babies and small children up to got really tired so they could go to sleep. So that was pretty unexpected, and it was also expecting. Now I'm able to topics, Esther.
Veronica, we can't hear you.
Sorry, I didn't expect to be crying after all of this. So, Deshaun, it is now your turn. You have a choice of, let's just leave it at that. You have a choice of all of the questions, or it's almost political season. You can answer whatever top of mind for you. Expectation is the word. Expected the unexpected is the theme.
Okay. I was not expecting Rick to have that many children. I was not expecting to have children at this time in my life, but my wife at the time had fibroid tumors, so they said, "Hey, you better get busy now before you won't be able to have children at all." And so we got busy with it. And unfortunately, I was expecting to try more than once, but it only took one time, and I'm like, "Oh man, just once, and you're pregnant already?" And I was expecting it to be a complete full term. We got all the way to 7 months, and I tried out some new bourbon that night before her water broke, because I wasn't expecting her to go into labor, and I was not expecting her to wake me up at 3 o'clock in the morning and tell me, "Hey, these are some pretty short contractions." And I said, "Hey, we're not having a baby tonight. I'm expecting to go back to sleep right now." But I wasn't expecting her to hit me upside the head and tell me to get the mess up right now and bring her all the way down to Christ Hospital, which I did. And I have a beautiful, large 10-year-old now. And I was not expecting to love anything more than life itself. Thank you. Back to you, Toastmaster.
Oh, I'm like crying. All right, I'm gonna turn it back over to the Toastmaster. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Veronica. We learned about a bourbon baby, and we learned about baby, and lots of babies in there. But those are excellent table topics. Thanks so much. We're now going to feature Veronica again because she is our featured speaker this afternoon. She is going to be doing a speech from the Dynamic Leadership Pathways. This is level 3, researching and presenting. Her evaluator is Janet. This is a 15-minute, 15-minute speech, and it is entitled Personal and Family Disaster Preparedness Planning. Veronica Sanford. Veronica Sanford, Personal and Family Disaster Preparedness Planning.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jeff. Now, I will say that I forgot to ask Joy how to make my picture show up in the little bottom corner of the presentation. So I will start off by sharing, which I might not yet have permission. Ta-da! I do. All right. I do. All right, Joy, if it's quick, how do I make my picture show up in the bottom right-hand corner?
I think you would have needed to do that before you opened the PowerPoint.
No worries. I'm going to skip it for this time, but I'll take it as an action item for next. And my apologies. Okay. So taking it from the top, and can everybody see my screen?
Yes,
All right.
I'm everybody.
Okay. Well, here we go. I will say that thinking about the worst things that can happen is not something you necessarily want to do all day, every day. But it's helpful if we, you, I, can plan, then the more prepared we are for the unexpected, the more we will be ready in case something does happen, and we will mitigate or alleviate some of the difficulty. So the roadmap for today is we're going to talk a little bit about the types of disasters. For me, I'm going to mention work and business and what's called continuity planning, uh, business continuity planning. And then we'll talk about family and personal, which is really the core of our meeting. And then I'll go into just briefly why me and why do I do this, and also then go into some time for questions. So that said, I will say which of these items are alike, and it's a bit of a trick question. Because they really say that regardless of the reason for the disaster or the issue, the result is that all of these, once they've started to happen or prior to starting to happen, that human intervention could have made the crisis a lot less. Uh, for example, the Canadian fires, as well as the fires in California, had we done a lot of the woodland maintenance, we could argue that those fires would have been less, but would have costed more in preparation. Audit could have caught some of the fraud and bad things that have happened. Hurricane Katrina, we could say, and I'm not one who's an expert in that, but we could have said that dam maintenance, etc., would have helped a bit. So I'll go on. From a business perspective, um, as I mentioned earlier, business continuity planning is something that we tend to do in advance of a disaster. And that is when we look at all the paperwork, all the analysis, everything that comes about in advance, and then also is executed um, during testing, annual testing, and also in advance of an actual, hopefully, you would bring up that paperwork during a disaster if you have time. Disaster recovery planning is more along the lines of the hardware side and the software side of actually testing what to do if a disaster were to come about. In essence, in terms of the planning of it, is that we're looking at listing what you have and then also what can you lose? What can you afford to lose? IT security is involved because you want to be able to prevent any type of hacking or loss of data. Uh, particularly it's people coming in and breaking into your systems, sometimes very slowly, and you don't find out until much later that you've lost something that you really know is important, like all of your customers' data. IT audit is generally having a second pair of eyes on hardware and software and making sure that the plans are in place that in case anything were to happen, that we as a company would be able to recover, all the important information, and also testing. And then asset management is in essence, from a business perspective, having a list of all the software and hardware, all the licensing information, and making sure that all of that is in place. Well, when I break that up, how does that relate to us as individuals? And I'd like to say that really all of it does relate. And I'll get into that in the next slide. So for a family, when we look at disaster recovery or family continuity planning, listing what you have is really important. Family photos, birth certificates, um, heirlooms, even if it's furniture, uh, grandmother's silverware. If you can't take it with you in a disaster, let's say it's a catastrophic fire, then having photos that are uploaded to the web can really make a difference in terms of sentiment. You may not be able to hold it in your hand, but if you have pictures of it, it will really make a difference. From IT security or security itself, you can imagine all the horrible things that could happen, and I don't want to go down that path, but I can say knowing the value of what you own and the risk of losing what you have, if you could log it and insure it or take actions to prevent or duplicate, the more prepared you will be in the case of actually losing something. Having copies of the insurance policies, knowing what those insurance policies say, having an umbrella policy, if in fact, an umbrella coverage up to whatever, $1 million. You'll hope you will never need that, but it is something to consider. And of course, your insurance broker would be happy to sell you all of that. Uh, from an audit perspective, that's something that's a little bit more difficult. But if you have a financial planner and or an insurance agent or a lawyer that you can speak to, or a relative that might be willing to stand in for those if you can't afford somebody to review it, but just to review all the documents, having a second pair of eyes there to take a look at, am I considering everything that if I were to lose it, what would happen? Now, I happen to be single, but for those of you who are married or have kids, do consider, often it's good to consider the loss of a second person's income to the family, etc., etc. Now, September happens to be Disaster Preparedness Month. And I meant to give this talk in September, but I missed my window. And so I will say that having that walkthrough of the documentation, and let's say, did I buy something? Did we buy something, a property, for example, in the Ozarks, or did we buy a new car, or did we inherit, things that we now have to consider? It's always good to take a look at those plans on an annual basis and see have anything dramatically changed. So getting back to asset management, cataloging and maintaining, making sure that those are, up there in the cloud, or having a secure flash drive that's encrypted. that is not located at your home site that perhaps would be at a bank in the, I forget the word, in the lockbox, the secure lockbox that they have. All right, so now jumping into planning, I'd like to focus on not so much all the horrible things that could happen. Instead, take the perspective of what to do if. So I'm going to run down some scenarios. So, for example, the type of disaster, is it a flood? Is it a fire? Is it a tornado? Is it a tree falling on the house? Is it a break-in? Is it, being taken over by aliens? Really, it's less along the lines of what all the different things that could happen. Do you have a mob coming in that's going to now all of a sudden, you know, take over every room in the house? I mean, we could go down crazy thinking, which trust me, I do. Then it's more along the lines of what is my response if we have to stay in the house without electricity, stay in the house without water, stay in the house having lost all of our identities, staying in the house versus having to evacuate the house, knowing where to evacuate. So the next item is called a call tree test. And this is making sure that we're able to ensure communication with our family, ensure communication with our banker, our insurance agent, our doctor, import our lawyer, import phone numbers and email addresses of people we need to communicate with. I also recommend if you have a business card, wallet-sized printout of important information, phone numbers and email addresses, etc., for everybody that's important in your life. Even if you have kids, your kids' teachers' information. Sometimes that may be important. If you have to go to another state, but you want to contact the teachers so that when you come back, your kid will be able to come back to the same place that everybody else in the class is. All right, so now impact analysis. When I say determining the value of each department, when I say department, I'm talking about, for example, my job, my non-existent spouse's job, my kids' teachers, my doctor's information, my spouse's doctor's information, my parents' doctor's information, etc. I'm going to take a breath and say, now some of the takeaways to be aware of, and I'll show you this in a moment. There's a website to write down. It's called ready.gov. And that's the site to take a look at. It's very, very, very in-depth. And it will walk you through all the different things to be ready in a disaster of all kinds. Just to reiterate, I want to say, make sure that you talk to family, both the family that you live with, the family that's nearby. I know, Jeff, you had said you have brothers on the other side of town. Talking to them, just asking them, hey, is it okay if we sleep over your house? Something happens on our side of town. Having those conversations in advance can be helpful, and also having their phone numbers and email addresses. Having a plan. making sure that the kids, particularly if they're an age where they can communicate, be part of that planning. Let's say 10 years old is probably old enough. 2 years old is not old enough to participate in that plan. But maybe knowing that you want them to grab their favorite blanket, and their little stuffed toy, if you have to evacuate, is important. I will also say, stay alert, be aware, I don't want to say watch the news every night if that's not of your interest, but be aware of the weather and be aware, of some things that be going on in the neighborhood. Also, get to know your neighbors. It would always be helpful to say, somebody with a chainsaw, if you can't get out one day, one year, I was trapped by my trees that came around my property. And one of my neighbors, sure enough, came with a chainsaw and got me out. So now, just briefly, I'll go into some of the business expectations at the time of the disaster. At the time of a disaster, in terms of business, 1/3 of the people on your staff will show up. Period. Just 1/3. 1/3 are with their families or taking care of business. This is statistical, based upon experience. 1/3 are gone, unreachable. You don't know where they are. You don't know what's going on with them, but you haven't heard back from them. The question is, are they the right third? Are they your most favorite third, the ones who really know the system? Are they some, trainee that responded and showed up to work the next day to help you guys dig out from whatever disaster? So understand that if you're dependent upon a business to have all their ducks in an order, they may not, because they may not have done all the disaster preparation. That's one thing we learned from Katrina. A lot of the banks were not recoverable for quite a while, and they depended upon you to have paper backups of your records. All right, so something as an aside of, if you work for a small business, they may not have a business continuity plan. So think about what happens if your key players don't show up. Think about what would happen if you didn't show up to work and they really were reliant on you. So from a professional point of view, you may want to consider, how do you make yourself just a little bit redundant so that you could train people to be your backup? And then personally, if you're stuck at work and you can't leave the building, do you have a source of water? Is there a source of food? And also, can you get to your personal cloud? This is something we learned with the World Trade Center. Do we have a way to evacuate? Do we know where the evacuation plan is? Do we know where the fire extinguisher is? Do we know where the defibrillation equipment is? All those types of things. Participate in the disaster recovery, the fire prevention. Do be a good corporate player for those who are not yet retired. And then for me, just quickly of my background, way back in the day, I was an electrical engineer. I worked on the cruise missile system. And one of the things we were looking at is, we worked at lit guidance and control, the navigation equipment. We wanted to make sure that the cruise missiles, if something were to happen, we were attacked by the Soviets, for example, that the cruise missiles, if they got hit by radiation, that they were strong and resilient enough to get where they were going or to self-destruct, so that they didn't hit Iowa, that they didn't go in the wrong direction. This is the short of it. this is sort of my path and along the lines to business. Happy to speak to anybody who's interested in this career path. I'm no longer really doing this anymore, but I could certainly give you some coaching. Then why do I care? It was a career, and it's certainly a practice that I tend to think about the worst things that can happen whenever I'm in an environment and my spider sense at the back of my neck says something's going on here, and I look around and I see somebody's acting suspiciously. I'm the one, I just notice it. I've got that spider sense. I've got what I call a Terminator 2 mentality of, I'm the one who's talking crazy about the future. Um, I mentioned already the defense industry. We did worst case analysis as engineers all the time. And also I take a look at risk mitigation. What can we do to help prevent or to at least alleviate some of the loss in case something were to happen? I don't have kids, so I have a momming instinct. I tend to take care of the people around me, even if they don't want me to. And now I'll open it up for questions and comments. And I see I'm red, so I will stay on after our meeting in case you have any questions for me, or text me. I'll put my personal information into the chat. Turn this back over to the Toastmaster.
Thank you, Veronica. Fantastic. I think we have a little bit of time, so I just want to make sure, does anybody have any questions that they want to answer now? If not, go ahead, Janet.
Veronica, the list that you showed on your PowerPoint slide about all the disasters that have been happening around the world and everything, were you saying that there's something common about all the disasters?
What's common is that either our reaction to the disaster or planning in advance of the disaster could have lessened the impact of that disaster. So even East Palestine in Ohio, which is where I happen to live, where the train derailment, one could argue that the exhaustion of the train conductor, et cetera, all of these things could have mitigated some of the effect of that disaster.
All right, thank you.
And Joy, did you have your hand up? Okay, maybe not.
I was going to say that Janet had a question,
Okay.
and I was going to thank her for ready.gov. I haven't looked it up yet, but you said it has a vast amount of information. So thank you for that, because I will take a look at that.
I always think of whenever my wife and I are flying and my daughter's not with us, I think, my gosh, what if God forbid, we're in a crash? Does she have all the critical information that she needs? So this is really super helpful, Veronica. Let's put a minute on the clock, David, if you don't mind, so that Janet can finish up her evaluation.
Okay, thank you.
All right, that's our minute is up. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next portion of the meeting, and that is the evaluation, where we get feedback on all of the speeches and table topics and so forth that we've participated in today. I'm going to turn that over to Joy Harris as our general evaluator. Joy?
Thank you, everyone. So we'll get to evaluating, which is a critical part of a Toastmaster Club meeting, because besides being able to convey information to our club and be able to present ideas and topics and stretch our mind, we're also here to improve our speaking skills. And one way that we improve our speaking skills is evaluating each part of the meeting. And we have assigned evaluators for our speeches. So our assigned evaluator today is Janet Castellan, who is going to evaluate our speech by Veronica Sanford. So Janet, if you would like to give us your evaluation.
Thank you, Joy. Yes, I have the privilege of evaluating Veronica's speech. And I talked to my husband last night that I was going to be Veronica's evaluator. And we both had expectation that you would do a wonderful job because you're a polished presenter. And yes, you did. I like the way that you broke out the different parts of your speech. So this, what you were going to talk about and help organize the speech. I also liked how for different titles, words, acronyms, you said what they stood for. You know, you had the acronym in parentheses of these kind of complicated words for someone that's not in IT to understand. I liked when you incorporated some humor. Disaster preparedness is a serious type speech, but you did incorporate some humor to make it more tolerable. And you gave some personal examples. Talked about one of your neighbors had a chainsaw that were trees out in your yard. How to get out of your house. And let's see, some areas, suggestions that you may improve on is perhaps talk to the audience during your talk and ask if they have any questions so far. I like the way Jeff gave us a time to ask some questions after a speech, but try to understand how the audience understands what you're saying to keep us informed of and understanding more of what you're saying. You did have a kind of a distinct, slower paced talk throughout, and I appreciated that. It gave me more time to write some notes. So thank you for trying to present kind of a complicated talk in a way to us, because you know it's a very important topic for us to all know what do we want to carry if we have to immediately run out of our house. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you. Very good evaluation to a very good speech. It is time now for the word and awe counter, the grammarian report, and I was privileged to be able to mark down everyone who used the word expectations. And the expectations were that Jeff used it, Rick used it, Deshawn, Veronica, and Janet, we all used the word expectation in our table topics and other presentations of our talks today. We also had our speaker, who is an accomplished speaker and does not sprinkle her speech with ums and ahs. I heard a now And the reason why I hear nows is because I think of storytelling as a part of my speech. Now we're going to do this, and now. So I think I caught 2 nows, Veronica, and for a 15-minute speech, that is not much. There was not anything to point out that was not a good fluent flow to the topic. I enjoyed learning more about complex, as our evaluator said. The topic is complex, and disaster recovery. If you're in managing projects, you think about disaster recovery. And if you're a business owner, you might think of business continuity, how we're going to keep our business afloat if a disaster happens. But there was so much there for the family and for the personal. And I particularly like that we got a lot of an overarching business and personal look at disaster recovery. So that is my report for today. I'm going to say that we can move on to our timer report. David, do you have a timer report for us?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Joy, and Madam President. So we have for table topics, those were supposed to be 1 to 2 minutes. Everyone was at least within the threshold, within the margin of error. So Debbie was 1 minute 36 seconds. Rick was a bit over, but within the 30-second leeway of 2 minutes 18 seconds. Deshaun, again, right on target, 1 minute 43 seconds. Veronica did take a little bit more time, did have the red out there with Veronica's speech. So we had 20 minutes 32 seconds for Veronica's speech. That was originally going to be 13 to 15 minutes. And then Janet, for the evaluation, that was going to be 2 to 3 minutes. That was right on target, 2 minutes 54 seconds. So, thank you. And back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
All right, thank you. If there are no other reports, I'll just move right into a general evaluation of our entire meeting. I believe we started on time, and we are staying on time according to our printed agenda. I'm liking that. One of the things that we did today, one of the things that we did well, I'm not sure if we have ever done this, but we had a consistency, a continuity between our word of the day, our table topics, and our featured speaker was all speaking about expectations and what happens if your expectations are not met, such as being faced with a disaster. So I particularly like that. I know we talked about having themes before, and we have had themes, and we've had themes that we announced at the beginning of the meeting. So there wasn't a lot of continuity, but I thought today flowed very well in that way. I like that quite a bit. And I liked the fact that we talked about I learned so much in the speech. One of the expectations is there's a third of the people that are out there responding to the disaster, and there's a third of the people that have to take care of their family or business. And then there's a third of the people that is unknown. We're not just sure where they are and those kind of things. As a person who deals with likelihoods and probabilities, and I don't mean just in my work life, I had been a project manager for many years, but even in my personal life, I think of likelihoods and probabilities. And if somebody talks to me about something, I'll say, well, what is the likelihood of that happening? But if it happened, what is the probability that we would be able to recover, that we would be able to handle it? So I particularly liked the estimation, just somewhere. I think she even gave us the reference of where that likelihood is, that roughly this is how people will shake out after a disaster in these thirds. I like that quite a bit. Again, I liked so much about the family planning, about keeping our documents safe. And it's something that we hear and we know, but hearing it and really letting it sink in are two different things. What would we do if we didn't have water or electricity? I have a supply of water. I have 3 gallons of water, and that would not last very long, but I have 3 gallons that I keep in case I would not have water in some specific time. And we learned about evacuation and a call tree. That call tree is pretty important because no one has all their phone numbers like we used to. We used to even remember people's numbers, but if you can't just poke it on your phone, there is a high likelihood that you don't know even all your family members' phone numbers these days. And so I like that she also said that we need a list of people with whom we need to communicate, such as teachers and that kind of thing, that if you had a personal disaster, you would be prepared with names and numbers. I like that quite a bit. So I'm going to say, and I already said I liked ready.gov. I like that quite a bit. I will say that I have been in a restaurant when the cash registers, the electricity went out and the supplemental lighting, there was enough light that you could see around in the restaurant, but I have had them come over to the table to say, you're welcome to stay as long as you want, but our cash registers are out and we can't charge you. We don't even have a backup plan. You make, when you go, if the electricity isn't back on, you don't have to pay. So I have had that happen more than once. And now I have heard recently of other people, and I'm thinking, isn't there any way? But I do realize with the electronic, the EDI, the electronic data interchange that takes place through the cash register, that clerks and cashiers, they don't have change. They don't have a way to mark down who was the cashier and this and that. It almost seems like they would have a way to let you pay during a disaster like that. But like I said, I have encountered that more than once. And I truly enjoyed everything about our table topics today. I appreciate our members that piped in, and we had guests. Debbie, I truly appreciate that you came to our meeting today. I know you as a very accomplished Toastmaster, and I know the work that you had done in Wilmington, so I didn't mean to speak up for you, but yes, I appreciate that you took on a question today. And Rick has joined us again today. I hope that becomes a habit. And Deshawn, who always gives us a little boost on things we have done well and things we could do better. We appreciate Deshawn being with us from our area, from our district and area. So I believe all in all, I'm going to evaluate this meeting as an A+. So let's move this to Jeff Vaught, who can give us the Toastmaster comments.
Well, the A+ was unexpected, so thank you. Sorry, the expectation was higher than I expected. Okay, it's too late to use the word of the day. But thanks everybody for participating. I think everybody on the call participated in the meeting today. And again, shout out to the visitors, Rick, Deshawn, and Debbie for attending, and the great speech by Veronica. With that, I'll turn it back to the president. Joy, right back to you again.
Well, I have used so much of my material in my evaluator speaking. I know you would be disappointed if I did not give you a grin or a pun, and I am not known for jokes, so don't expect any jokes. But I do want to tell you that you can take my advice, because I'm not using it,